The morning sky above New York City turned dark without warning. People stopped in the streets and looked up, their coffee cups frozen halfway to their mouths. The darkness was not clouds. It was ships. Thousands of them, each one larger than any building on Earth. Blocking out the sun itself, Admiral Catherine Cole was in her office at United Earth's coalition headquarters when the alarms started screaming. She pushed back from her desk and ran to the command center, her boots echoing on the metal floor. Officers rushed past her, their faces pale with fear. In her 30 years of military service, she had never seen anything like this. The year was 2347. Humanity had spread to 17 colony worlds across the stars. They had built cities on Mars, mined asteroids for precious metals, and created a network of faster-than-light gates that connected their civilization. But in all that time, in all those light years of exploration, they had never found intelligent alien life until now. The main display screen in the command center showed the alien fleet. 3,000 warships hung in orbit above Earth, their hulls black and angular like the teeth of some cosmic predator. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, a young officer with nervous hands, pulled up the sensor data and projected it for everyone to see. "They came through fold space approximately 7 minutes ago," he said, his voice shaking. "We're detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our database. Their smallest ships are twice the size of our largest carriers." Admiral Cole studied the images in silence. She had faced pirates, rebels, and natural disasters throughout her career. She had made hard decisions that cost lives and saved others. But this was different. This was first contact. And it was not the peaceful meeting humanity had always dreamed of. The alien broadcast began without warning. Every screen on Earth, every communication device across all 17 human worlds suddenly showed the same image. A creature stood before them, tall and skeletal, with gray skin stretched tight over sharp bones. Its eyes were black and empty, showing no emotion at all. When it spoke, its voice was translated into perfect English by technology humanity could not understand. "I am High Sovereign Kethras of the Vorthon Dominion. Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for integration into our empire. You will surrender all military assets, governmental control, and territorial claims within 48 hours. Compliance will result in efficient administration of your worlds. Resistance will result in complete extermination. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. This message will not repeat." The broadcast ended. Silence filled the command center. Admiral Cole watched her officers. Some were crying quietly. Others stood frozen, unable to process what they had just heard. A few were already pulling up tactical displays, their training taking over, even as their minds struggled to accept reality. "Get me everything we know about these Vorthons," she said calmly. "Every scrap of data from our deep space sensors. Every transmission we've intercepted. Everything." Lieutenant Webb worked quickly, his fingers flying across the console. Within minutes, he had compiled what little information they had. The Vorthon had been detected briefly by long-range probes over the past decade, but always at extreme distances. They were considered a theoretical threat, something for future generations to worry about. Future generations had arrived early. President Daniel Harper called an emergency session of the Coalition Council within the hour. Admiral Cole attended, along with every senior military commander in human space, connected by quantum link across the light years. The council chamber was filled with frightened diplomats and politicians demanding answers that nobody had. Colonel Lisa Grant from Strategic Command presented the tactical assessment. She was a small woman with gray hair and steady eyes, known for her brilliant analytical mind. Today, her analysis brought no comfort. "The Vorthon Dominion has conquered 62 intelligent species across the galaxy," she said, displaying images that made several council members gasp. "Destroyed worlds, enslaved populations, civilizations reduced to ashes. No species has ever successfully resisted them. Their military technology is approximately 300 years ahead of our own. Their fleet numbers in the hundreds of thousands. What we see above Earth is merely a forward expeditionary force." "Then we must surrender," someone shouted from the back. "We have no choice." "There is always a choice," Admiral Cole said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood up slowly, her uniform crisp, despite the chaos of the morning. She was 54 years old, with short silver hair and eyes that had seen too much death to be afraid of seeing more. "The Vorthon expects us to follow a script," she said. 62 species received this ultimatum before us, and 62 species either surrendered immediately or attempted conventional resistance. The ones who surrendered were enslaved. The ones who fought were destroyed. But none of them did what I am about to propose. She walked to the main display and called up a tactical map of the solar system. The Vorthon fleet appeared as a mass of red dots surrounding Earth like angry wasps around a nest. "Their ships are large and powerful, but they are slow," she said, pointing to movement data. "Their tactics rely on overwhelming force concentrated in one location. They move as a single mass because they have never needed to do otherwise. Why would they adapt when no enemy has ever given them a reason to?" Colonel Grant frowned. "What exactly are you suggesting, Admiral?" "I am suggesting that we do not fight the war they expect. We do not line up our 400 ships against their 3,000 and die honorably. Instead, we fight like humans have always fought when outnumbered. We cheat." A murmur ran through the council chamber. President Harper leaned forward, his tired face showing the first spark of hope. "Explain," he said. Admiral Cole smiled grimly. "We have 48 hours. In that time, I want every ship in our fleet divided into small, fast strike groups. I want every civilian vessel capable of carrying weapons retrofitted for combat. I want every orbital platform, mining station, and cargo hauler turned into a weapons platform. I want our hackers attacking their communications, our scientists analyzing their technology for weaknesses, and our factories producing drones around the clock. Even with all that, we cannot match their firepower," Colonel Grant said. "We don't need to match their firepower," Admiral Cole replied. "We need to survive long enough to make them bleed. The Vorthon have never lost a battle. They have never paid a real price for conquest. They believe they are invincible. We are going to teach them otherwise." She looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. Some still looked doubtful. Others were beginning to understand. "They gave us 48 hours to surrender," she said. "Let's give them 48 hours to regret coming here." The council voted within the hour. It was unanimous. Humanity would fight. Lieutenant Webb found Admiral Cole standing at a window after the meeting, looking up at the darkened sky, where alien ships waited to destroy everything she had ever known. He hesitated before approaching her. "Admiral, do you really think we can win?" She was quiet for a long moment. When she answered, her voice was soft but steady. "I think that winning is not the only thing that matters. The Vorthon want us to kneel. They want us to accept our place as slaves in their empire. Even if we lose, even if we all die, we will show the galaxy that humanity does not kneel. We do not accept. We do not surrender." She turned to face him, and he saw something burning in her eyes. And who knows? Maybe that will be enough. Maybe somewhere out there, another species will hear about us and find the courage to fight. But first, Lieutenant, we have a war to prepare for. She walked past him toward the command center. The clock was ticking. 30-6 hours remained. When humanity began its impossible mobilization, Admiral Catherine, Cole established her command aboard the carrier Endurance, the largest ship in the human fleet. It was not much compared to the Vorthon vessels that filled the sky, but it was fast, well-armed, and crewed by the best officers in the Coalition Navy. She stood on the bridge and watched the organized chaos unfolding across human space. Captain Derek Simmons arrived within the first hour, piloting his destroyer through the crowded space lanes around Earth. He was a tall man with a crooked nose that had been broken twice in bar fights, and a reputation for creative tactics that drove his superiors crazy. Admiral Cole had specifically requested him for the first strike wing. "You wanted pilots who don't follow the rules," he said, saluting casually. "I figured that meant you wanted me." "I want pilots who can think," she replied. "The Vorthon have 300 years of technological advantage. We have stubbornness and creativity. I need you to turn that into a weapon." Simmons grinned. "I've been turning stubbornness into weapons my whole career. Just ask my ex-wife." Commander Rachel Moore handled communications from a station on the lower deck. She was responsible for coordinating information flow between all 17 human colonies, a task that would have been impossible without the quantum link network. Every ship, every station, every ground installation received constant updates on the tactical situation. The response from human colonies was overwhelming. On Mars, Governor Patricia Lane opened the military reserves and found 3 times as many volunteers as she had weapons for. On Kepler Station, F, factory workers voted to skip sleep and run production lines around the clock. In the asteroid belt, miners flew their heavy cargo haulers toward Earth, already planning how to turn their industrial equipment into weapons. These haulers weren't built for combat, one miner told the news cameras. His name was George Cooper, a third-generation asteroid miner with dust in his lungs and steel in his spine. But they're tough. They can take a hit. And if I can fly one of these babies into an alien engine port, well, that's a trade I'm willing to make. The story repeated itself across human space. Tired veterans reported to recruitment stations, many of them gray-haired and slow-moving, but with decades of experience. Teenage hackers contacted military intelligence and offered their skills. Scientists abandoned their research projects and focused entirely on finding weaknesses in Vorthon technology. Dr. Samuel Price was one of those scientists. He worked at the Geneva Research Institute, where he had spent 15 years studying quantum field manipulation. His research was purely theoretical, meant to advance human understanding of physics, not to create weapons. But theory could become practice when survival demanded it. The basic principle is simple, he explained to Colonel Lisa Grant when she visited his laboratory. Every object in the universe generates a gravitational field. Our technology allows us to amplify and focus that field in a localized area. In practical terms, we can create a zone where gravity increases by a factor of several thousand. And what happens to anything inside that zone? Grant asked. Dr. Price removed his glasses and cleaned them nervously. It gets crushed completely. Even the strongest materials cannot withstand gravitational forces of that magnitude. A ship caught in the field would collapse like a can under a boot. How quickly can you build a working weapon? The device itself is nearly complete. We're going to test it next month under controlled conditions. But if you need it now, we can have it operational within 30 hours. Grant looked at the strange machinery filling the laboratory. It was humanity's only hope of matching Vorthon firepower, and it had never been tested. Do it, she said. While scientists worked and soldiers prepared, Thalvant, High Sovereign, Kethris watched the human activity from his flagship with something approaching amusement. He had conquered dozens of species, and they all behaved the same way when facing inevitable defeat. They scrambled, they panicked, they made desperate preparations that ultimately meant nothing. It was almost entertaining. His subordinates reported the human movements with confusion. Small ships were spreading out rather than concentrating. Civilian vessels were joining military formations. Strange energy signatures were detected from various locations across human space. They are not following standard defensive protocols, one officer noted. It does not matter what protocols they follow, Kethris replied. They could have 1,000,000 ships and it would not change the outcome. We have crushed civilizations far older and more powerful than this young species. Their defiance is merely the twitching of a dying animal. He ordered a second broadcast, designed to crush any remaining hope the humans might have. The message appeared on every screen across human space. Kethris described in vivid detail what had happened to the last species that refused to surrender. They were called the Velthari, and they had been proud warriors with a fleet of 2,000 vessels. The Vorthon destroyed them in 3 days. Not a single Velthari survived. This is your future, Kethris concluded. Surrender now and live as servants of the Dominion. Resist and burn like the Velthari burned. The choice seems simple, does it not? Admiral Cole watched the broadcast from the Bridge of Endurance. Around her, officers shifted uncomfortably. Images of the burning Velthari world were horrifying, designed specifically to break human will. She turned to Lieutenant Marcus Webb. How is fleet morale? Scared, he admitted, but angry too. That broadcast didn't just frighten people, it made them mad. Good. She activated the fleet-wide communication channel. Her voice would reach every human ship, every station, every soldier waiting for orders. You've all seen the Vorthon message, she said. You've seen what they did to the Velthari. They want you to be afraid. They want you to give up. They have been using fear as a weapon for thousands of years, and it has always worked. She paused, letting her words sink in. But they made a mistake. They thought fear would work on us too. They don't understand what they're dealing with. Humans have been surviving against impossible odds since we first walked upright on a dangerous planet. We've faced ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have destroyed us 100 times over. We are still here. Her voice grew stronger. The Vorthon have never met a species like us. They have never faced an enemy that gets stronger when threatened. They have never understood that fear doesn't make us weak. It makes us dangerous. She looked out at the stars, at the alien ships waiting to destroy her world. We've received their terms. We've heard their threats. Now let me tell you what we're going to do about it. We're going to show them what humanity is made of. We are going to make them pay for every inch of space they take. We are going to fight in ways they have never seen, with weapons they cannot predict, using tactics they cannot counter. Commander Moore reported that every human ship was listening. Every colony, every station, every soldier. When they ask us to surrender, when they demand that we kneel, we are going to give them the only answer humanity has ever given to tyrants. She smiled grimly. No, the channel closed. Across human space, officers and soldiers looked at each other with new determination in their eyes. The fear was still there, but something else was growing alongside it, something the Vorthon had never encountered before. Hope, mixed with anger, terror transformed into resolve. Species that had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Captain Simmons appeared on screen from his destroyer. Admiral, first strike wing is ready. Just give us a target. Soon, she promised. Very soon. 12 hours remained when Dr. Price reported that the quantum field weapon was complete. It works, he said, exhaustion clear in his voice. God help us, it actually works. Admiral Cole ordered it transported to Endurance immediately. The clock continued ticking. The Vorthon continued waiting, and humanity finished preparing for war. The 48-hour deadline expired at exactly noon. Earth Standard Time. High Sovereign Kethris stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by officers who had never known defeat. He had given the humans every opportunity to surrender. He had shown them the fate of those who resisted. Now it was time to demonstrate that his warnings were not empty threats. Begin the advance, he ordered. Destroy their orbital defenses first, then their fleet, then their cities. Leave nothing standing. 3,000 Vorthon warships moved as one, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. They formed a massive wedge pointed directly at Earth, an unstoppable wall of destruction that had crushed 62 civilizations before this one. Admiral Catherine Cole watched them come from the Bridge of Endurance. Her fleet of 400 ships was hidden among the asteroid fields and behind the moon, waiting for her signal. Captain Derek Simmons and the First Strike Wing held position near Mars, their engines cold to avoid detection. They're moving exactly as predicted, Lieutenant Marcus Webb reported. Single formation, no scouts, no flanking elements, not even trying to locate our ships. Why would they? Admiral Cole replied. They've never needed to hunt for enemies. Enemies always come to them, trying to defend fixed positions. They've never faced an opponent who refused to play by their rules. Commander Rachel Moore coordinated the last-minute preparations across the communication network. Thousands of Messages flew back and forth as human forces confirmed their positions and readiness. Mining platforms in the asteroid belt powered up weapons that had been disguised as drilling equipment. Cargo haulers loaded with explosives waited behind Europa's shadow. The entire solar system had become a trap. The Vorthon fleet passed Mars without slowing down. They had detected the human ships hiding near the red planet, but dismissed them as insignificant. A few hundred small vessels against 3,000 warships was not a threat worth acknowledging. That was their first mistake. "First strike wing execute," Admiral Cole ordered. Captain Simmons had been waiting for those words. He pushed his throttle forward and led 47 destroyers directly into the gap between two Vorthon battlecruisers. His pilots followed without hesitation, their ships small and fast compared to the alien monsters around them. "Target their communication relays," Simmons ordered. "Don't try to destroy the ships, just blind them." Human weapons were weaker than Vorthon shields, but they were not useless. Concentrated fire from the entire wing punched through the sensor. Arrays and communication dishes mounted on the alien hulls. Within seconds, two massive battlecruisers lost contact with the rest of their fleet. The Vorthon responded with overwhelming firepower, their main cannons turning to swat the annoying human ships like insects. But the destroyers were already gone, burning hard toward another target. They were too fast, too small, too unpredictable. More human strike groups emerged from hiding throughout the solar system. They hit the Vorthon flanks simultaneously, targeting sensors, engines, and weapon ports. Each group attacked for only 30 seconds before withdrawing, never giving the aliens time to bring their superior firepower to bear. Kethras watched the battle unfold with growing irritation. Human ships were everywhere and nowhere, appearing without warning and vanishing before his gunners could track them. It was like trying to catch smoke with his bare hands. "Focus all fire on their primary attack group," he ordered. But which group was primary? The humans had no central formation, no flagship leading the charge. They attacked from every direction at once, like a swarm of stinging insects that could not be crushed. On Mars, Colonel Lisa Grant activated the planetary defense grid. Thousands of automated weapons platforms had been hidden across the red planet's surface and in orbit around it. Disguised as mining equipment and research stations, they opened fire simultaneously, creating a wall of destruction that the Vorthon fleet had to pass through. 17 alien warships died in the first minute. 43 more took significant damage, their shields flickering and failing under the unexpected assault. "They hid weapons in civilian infrastructure," a Vorthon officer reported, shock evident in his voice. "Their entire system is a fortress." Kethras felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as uncertainty. The Vorthon had conquered 62 species across the galaxy. None of them had ever fought like this. None of them had turned their entire civilization into a weapon. "Continue the advance," he commanded, forcing confidence into his voice. "They cannot sustain this level of resistance. Their resources are limited." But the resistance continued. From the asteroid belt, converted mining haulers charged directly at the Vorthon formation. Their pilots, civilian volunteers with nothing to lose, aimed their heavy ships at alien engine ports and weapons arrays. Most were destroyed before reaching their targets, but those that got through caused devastating damage. One hauler, piloted by a man named George Cooper, crashed directly into a battlecruiser's reactor core and triggered an explosion that destroyed 3 nearby ships on Earth. Civilian communication networks carried footage of the battle to every human being across 17 worlds. People watched in homes, offices, and shelters as their fleet fought against impossible odds. They saw ships die and heroes sacrifice themselves. But they also saw the Vorthon bleeding for the first time in their history, Commander. Moore reported the morale boost to Admiral Cole. "People are volunteering faster than we can process them. Ground forces are reporting full readiness. Even children are asking how they can help." Admiral Cole nodded grimly. The battle was going better than she had hoped, but the cost was terrible. She watched the tactical display as human ships vanished one by one, each disappearing representing hundreds of lives lost. Captain Simmons contacted her from First Strike Wing. his voice distorted by damage to his communication systems. "Admiral, we've taken heavy losses. Down to 31 ships, but we've crippled their sensor network. They're fighting half-blind now. Pull back and regroup," she ordered. Phase 2 begins in 10 minutes. The Vorthon paused their advance to reassess the situation. In 3 hours of fighting, they had lost over 200 ships, more than they had lost in their last 5 conquests combined. Their formation was scattered and confused. Officers arguing over tactical decisions that their rigid command structure was not designed to handle. Kethras stared at the tactical display, watching human ships dance around his fleet like deadly fireflies. He had underestimated them badly. Their technology was inferior, but their tactics were unlike anything in Vorthan military doctrine. They did not fight to win. They fought to cause pain, to make every victory cost more than it was worth. He opened a channel to his fleet. "All ships, concentrate on their carrier, the one called Endurance. Destroy it, and their coordination will collapse." The Vorthon fleet reformed around his flagship and began moving toward Endurance's position. If they could not catch the small ships, they would destroy the command vessel directing them. Admiral Cole watched them come. The quantum field weapon, delivered by Dr. Price's team just hours before, hummed quietly in Endurance's cargo hold. It had never been tested in combat. There was no way to know if it would work against Vorthon shields, but there was no more time for testing. "All ships fall back to defensive positions around Endurance," she ordered. "This is where we make our stand." Lieutenant Webb looked at her with fear in his eyes. "Admiral, their entire fleet is coming. We can't survive a direct engagement." "We don't need to survive," she replied. "We need to win. There's a difference." The Vorthon fleet approached, thousands of weapons charging for the killing blow. Above Earth, satellites captured images of the alien armada bearing down on humanity's last hope. Admiral Cole watched them come without flinching. "Charge the quantum field generator," she ordered. "Let's show them what humans can do." The machine began to hum louder, building power for a weapon that would either save humanity or die trying. The battle for Earth became the most brutal engagement in the history of the galaxy. Admiral Catherine Cole stood at the center of the bridge on Endurance. Surrounded by officers working frantically at their stations, the tactical display showed the Vorthon fleet converging on their position, a red tide of destruction that filled the screen from edge to edge. Behind her, the quantum field generator hummed with increasing power, waiting for the moment it would be needed. "Enemy fleet entering optimal firing range in 3 minutes," Lieutenant Marcus Webb reported, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "All ships, engage at will," Admiral Cole commanded. "Make every shot count." The final phase of the battle began. Human destroyers launched from their defensive positions around Endurance. Meeting the Vorthon advance head-on, they were outnumbered 10-1, outgunned by weapons 3 centuries more advanced than their own, facing an enemy that had never known defeat. None of that mattered to the pilots. Captain Derek Simmons led what remained a first strike wing directly at the enemy flagship. His ship was damaged, his crew exhausted, but his determination had not wavered since the battle began. He had lost friends, watched good pilots die screaming as their ships broke apart around them. Now, he was going to make the Vorthon pay. "All wings, follow my lead," he ordered. "We're going to punch a hole in their formation and give the Admiral a clear shot at their command ship." 31 destroyers accelerated to maximum speed, their engines burning so hot that hull temperatures exceeded safety limits. They flew in a tight formation, combining their shields into a single barrier that could absorb more punishment than any individual ship could survive. The Vorthon opened fire. Beams of energy brighter than stars cut through space, vaporizing to destroyers instantly. A third ship took a glancing hit that tore away half its hull, sending it spinning into the void. The survivors pushed through the barrage without slowing down. Commander Rachel Moore coordinated the attack from her station, feeding targeting data to every human ship. Electronic warfare specialists attacked Vorthon computer systems, creating chaos in their targeting solutions. One of those specialists was Chris Palmer, former game designer who had spent years creating artificial intelligence for video games. Now he was using those skills to confuse alien weapon systems. Their targeting computers use predictive algorithms, Palmer explained over the tactical channel. They calculate where our ships will be based on movement patterns. But if we move randomly, irrationally, they can't predict us. Human pilots began flying in patterns that made no tactical sense, randomly changing direction and speed. The Vorthon gunners, used to enemies who behaved logically, found themselves shooting at empty space while human ships slipped past their fire. Hi. Sovereign Kethros watched his officers struggle with growing frustration. The humans were fighting in ways that violated every principle of military science. They were wasting energy on random movements, exposing themselves to counterattack, behaving like a swarm of insects rather than a disciplined military force. And somehow, they were winning. Not winning the battle exactly. They were still hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned, but they were refusing to die according to schedule. They were making the Vorthon work for every kill, trading lives for time in a way that no conquered species had ever done before. Admiral Cole Webb said urgently, "We've lost 70 ships. Another 40 are damaged. We can't sustain these losses much longer." Cole nodded without taking her eyes off the tactical display. The cost was terrible. Each destroyed ship meant hundreds of humans dead, families shattered, futures erased. But she had known from the beginning that this battle would be paid for in blood. How long until the quantum field generator is fully charged? For minutes. Then we hold for 4 minutes. Captain Simmons and First Strike Wing reached the center of the Vorthon formation. They were down to 19 ships, all of them damaged, many with life support failing and weapons malfunctioning. It didn't matter. They had a job to do. "Target the flagship's shield generators," Simmons ordered. "Everything we've got." The destroyers unleashed every weapon they had remaining. Missiles, energy, beams, and kinetic rounds hammered the Vorthon command ship's shields. Individually, human weapons could barely scratch alien armor. Concentrated together, focused on a single point, they created cracks in defenses that had been thought invincible. Kethros felt his flagship shudder under the assault. His officers reported shield failures across multiple sections. For the first time in his long life, he felt genuine concern for his own safety. "Destroy those ships immediately," he commanded. "All available weapons, focus fire." The Vorthon flagship turned its main batteries on the destroyers. Captain Simmons saw death coming and smiled. "It's been an honor, boys and girls," he said over the wing channel. For Earth, his ship exploded first, followed by 12 others in rapid succession. The remaining 6 destroyers scattered, their mission accomplished. They had weakened the flagship's shields and given Endurance the opening it needed. Admiral Cole watched the First Strike Wing die on her tactical display. She had known Derek Simmons for 15 years. He had been at her wedding, had held her daughter when she was born, had been the best pilot she had ever seen. Now he was gone, along with hundreds of other brave people who had trusted her leadership. She allowed herself one moment of grief. Then she locked it away and turned to the task at hand. "Quantum field generator status?" "Fully charged and ready, Admiral." The Vorthon flagship loomed ahead, its damaged shields flickering but still powerful enough to destroy Endurance a dozen times over. Kethros himself was aboard that ship, the architect of humanity's suffering, the conqueror of 62 species. Cole opened a direct channel to the enemy flagship. Kethra's skeletal face appeared on her screen, his black eyes showing something she had never expected to see. "Respect. You fight well, human," he said. "Better than any species we have encountered. But this battle is over. Your fleet is broken. Your world is defenseless. Surrender now, and I will grant your people a quick death rather than the long suffering I originally planned." Admiral Cole looked at the alien who had threatened to burn her world. She thought of the 17 colonies behind her, the billions of humans counting on her fleet. She thought of Captain Simmons and all the others who had died to give her this chance. "You came here with 3,000 ships," she said quietly. "You've lost nearly 1,000. Your formation is scattered. Your flagship is damaged. Your officers are confused and frightened." She smiled. "And you think we're the ones who should surrender?" Your defiance is admirable, but pointless. We have reserves. More fleets. You have already spent everything you have. Not everything. She nodded to Lieutenant Webb, who activated the quantum field generator. The weapon fired. A beam of twisted space-time lanced from Endurance toward the Vorthon flagship. It moved at the speed of light, impossible to dodge or intercept. When it struck the alien vessel, physics itself became a weapon. Gravity inside the affected zone increased by a factor of 10,000. The Vorthon flagship, the most powerful warship in the Dominion, crumpled like paper being crushed in a giant fist. Metal screamed and tore. Bulkheads collapsed. Crew members were pulverized instantly, their bodies compressed into unrecognizable masses. Kethris had exactly 1 second to understand what was happening before the gravitational forces crushed him out of existence. The flagship imploded completely, taking 3 nearby ships with it. The explosion sent debris flying in all directions, damaging a dozen more Vorthon vessels. Silence fell across the battlefield. Admiral Cole looked at the empty space where the enemy flagship had been. The High Sovereign of the Vorthon Dominion, conqueror of 62 species, was dead. Killed by a weapon he had never imagined, wielded by a species he had dismissed as inferior. The remaining Vorthon ships hung motionless, their crews stunned by what they had witnessed. Their leader was dead. Their invincible armada was bleeding. The impossible had happened. Commander Moore, Admiral Cole said calmly, broadcast the following message to the Vorthon fleet. Choosing her words carefully. Your High Sovereign is dead. Your invasion has failed. Withdraw immediately or share his fate. This is your only warning, the message went out. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the Vorthon fleet began to move. They were retreating. The Vorthon retreat was not orderly. Ships that had never known defeat fled in panic, their crews terrified by the weapon that had destroyed their invincible leader. They raced toward the fold space exit points, desperate to escape the system before the humans could use that terrible weapon again. Admiral Catherine Cole was not in a merciful mood. All ships pursue, she ordered. Don't let them regroup. What remained of the human fleet surged forward, hunting the hunters who had come to destroy them. Damaged destroyers, civilian haulers with improvised weapons, even rescue shuttles armed with nothing but determination joined the chase. The Vorthon had come to conquer. Now they were running for their lives. Commander Rachel Moore coordinated the pursuit from her station, directing human ships to cut off escape routes and herd the panicking aliens into kill zones. The asteroid belt, which had been a trap for humanity hours before, now became a graveyard for Vorthon warships. Mining platforms continued to fire, their weapons joined by the guns of every human vessel still capable of fighting. Lieutenant Marcus Webb reported the casualty figures with a mixture of grief and grim satisfaction. We've lost 212 ships, Admiral. 43,000 dead. But the Vorthon have lost over 1,000 vessels. Their command structure is completely broken. Admiral Cole nodded silently. The numbers were terrible. 43,000 humans had died in a single day, more than in any battle in human history. But they had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that had never been defeated, humanity had won. The pursuit lasted 6 hours. Some Vorthon ships surrendered rather than face destruction, their crews emerging with hands raised in the universal gesture of defeat. Others fought to the death, unable to accept that their empire had suffered its first true loss. Most simply ran, their fold space drives screaming as they fled toward home. Of the 3,000 ships that had arrived to conquer Earth, fewer than 200 escaped when the last Vorthon vessel vanished into fold space. Admiral Cole allowed herself to sit down for the first time in nearly 20 hours. Her body ached, her mind was exhausted, but she fell. Something she had not expected. Hope. The celebration across human space was unlike anything anyone had seen before. People poured into the streets on 17 worlds, crying and laughing and holding each other. Strangers embraced. Enemies reconciled. The threat that had united humanity in fear now united them in triumph. On Earth. President Daniel Harper addressed the Coalition Council and the watching billions. His face was tired but proud, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "Today we faced extinction," he said. "Today we were told to surrender or die. Today we chose to fight. And today we won." He paused, letting his words sink in. This victory belongs to every human being. To the soldiers who fought, to the scientists who built our weapons, to the civilians who volunteered for certain death. It belongs to the miners who flew cargo ships into alien warships, to the factory workers who built weapons around the clock, to the hackers who confused enemy systems. His voice grew stronger. The Vorthon thought they knew what humans were capable of. They were wrong. They thought fear would break us. They were wrong. They thought we would kneel before their power. They were wrong about that too. 3 days after the battle, a Vorthon diplomatic vessel arrived under flag of truce. It was a small ship, unarmed, carrying a single passenger, a minor official named Kethfer. He had been chosen for this mission because no senior Vorthon leader was willing to face the species that had killed their high sovereign. Admiral Maya Cole received him aboard Endurance. In the same conference room where she had commanded the battle, she made no effort to hide the damage to her ship or the exhaustion of her crew. She wanted Kethfer to see exactly what humanity had endured, and exactly how little it had broken them. The alien diplomat was nervous, his gray skin even paler than normal. He delivered his message in a voice that trembled slightly. "The Dominion offers terms of peace, complete withdrawal from human space, recognition of human sovereignty, reparations for damages caused by our invasion." He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "However, I am instructed to inform you that this was merely an expeditionary force. The Dominion possesses hundreds of additional fleets, millions of soldiers, weapons even more powerful than those you have seen. What happened here was a setback, not a defeat. If humanity continues to show aggression, we will return in force." Admiral Cole listened to the threats without expression. When Kethfer finished, she was silent for a long moment. "Let me make sure I understand," she said finally. "You invaded our space without provocation? You threatened to destroy our civilization. You killed 43,000 of our people. And now you're warning us about what will happen if we show aggression?" Kethfer shifted uncomfortably. "The Dominion merely seeks to prevent further conflict." Cole stood up slowly and walked to the viewport. Outside, repair ships worked on damaged human vessels, welding armor, and replacing weapons. Factories across 17 worlds were producing more warships than humanity had ever built before. Scientists were already improving the quantum field generator, making it smaller, more powerful, easier to deploy. "Do you know what happened after your fleet retreated?" she asked, not turning around. No. Every human colony voted to increase military spending. Every factory capable of producing weapons is now doing so. Volunteers are still arriving faster than we can train them. Our scientists are developing new technologies based on what we captured from your ships." She turned to face him. "The Dominion has conquered 62 species. You have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. You have never lost a war. Do you know why?" Kethfer shook his head. "Because you never faced an enemy that got stronger when you threatened them. You never encountered a species that responds to fear with anger. You never understood that some creatures fight harder when they have nothing left to lose." She leaned forward, her eyes boring into his. "Go home. Tell your leaders what you have seen. Tell them that humanity is no longer afraid. Tell them that we are building weapons they cannot imagine. Training soldiers who do not know how to surrender. Preparing for a war we will fight across the galaxy if necessary." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And tell them that if they ever threaten us again, what happened to Kethris will seem merciful compared to what comes next." Kethris swallowed hard. His people had been conquerors for millennia, but he recognized the look in this human's eyes. It was the look of a predator that had tasted blood and wanted more. "Is there nothing else you demand?" he asked weakly. "No territory? No tribute? No guarantees?" Admiral Cole smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. You came here with 3,000 warships. You threatened to burn our worlds? You showed us what you did to the Veltharia. She paused. Is that all? The question hung in the air between them. Is that all? She repeated. Because if it is, I have to say, we expected more. Kethfer had no response. He left the conference room, boarded his diplomatic vessel, and fled human space as fast as his engines would carry him. 50 years later, humanity stood as one of the great powers of the galaxy. The Vorthon Dominion, weakened by their catastrophic defeat and the rebellions that followed, had fractured into warring factions. Dozens of species they had enslaved won their freedom, many with human assistance. The galaxy knew humanity as liberators, warriors, and above all, survivors. Admiral Catherine Cole, now 92 years old, gave her final interview from her home in Vancouver. A young journalist asked her what made humanity different from the 62 species. The Vorthon had conquered. She was silent for a moment. Looking out at the peaceful sky, they thought fear was their greatest weapon, she said finally. They had been using it for thousands of years, and it had always worked. Species after species had surrendered when faced with annihilation. The Vorthon believed that all intelligent beings were rational, that they would choose survival over resistance. She turned to face the camera. They didn't understand. Humans aren't purely rational. We're stubborn, emotional, and sometimes dangerously stupid. When you threaten us, you don't make us weaker. You make us angry? And there's nothing in this universe more dangerous than a human being who has decided they have nothing left to lose. The interview ended. The recording passed into history, and somewhere in the stars, alien civilizations updated their databases with a simple warning beside humanity's entry. Do not threaten. Do not underestimate. Do not provoke. Because humanity would always ask the same question. Is that all? And God help anyone who could not give a better answer.